Every single year, Americans consume 1.85 billion pounds of potato chips. That is roughly 6.6 pounds per person, every man, woman, and child in the country. The potato chip industry in the United States alone is worth over $10 billion annually. Globally, we are talking about a $30 billion industry. And it was all triggered by one angry chef who wanted to humiliate a difficult customer. Welcome to the Food Files. Today's case, the potato chip. The most consumed snack food in American history, born from frustration, perfected by accident. Turned into an empire by a traveling salesman with $100 and a Ford Model A. Before we open the file, if this is your first time here, the Food Files is where we investigate the real, untold, and often shocking history of American food. New case every 2 weeks. Hit subscribe. Don't miss the next one. Let's start at the beginning. The year is 1853, Saratoga Springs, New York. At this time, Saratoga Springs is the most fashionable resort town in America, the Hamptons of the 19th century. Wealthy industrialists, railroad barons, politicians, and socialites all flock there every summer. And at the center of the social scene is Moon's Lake House, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the region. Working as head chef at Moon's Lake House is a man named George Speck, better known by the name he adopted professionally, George Crumb. Crumb is of African American and Native American heritage, the son of Abraham Speck, a jockey from Kentucky, and a Stockbridge Indian mother. He grew up in the Adirondacks, working as a wilderness guide and hunter, and discovered along the way that he had an extraordinary gift for cooking. By the time he arrived at Moon's Lake House in 1853, he was already one of the most celebrated chefs in the northeastern United States. His specialties: wild game, venison, duck, woodcock, partridge, brook trout from local streams, lake bass. In 1889, 36 years later, a New York Herald reporter would call him the best cook in the country. This was not a man who took criticism lightly. And on one particular afternoon in the summer of 1853, a customer at Moon's Lake House sent his plate of French fried potatoes back to the kitchen. The reason: too thick, not thin enough, not crispy enough. George Crumb was not happy. Comment question number 1. Have you ever sent food back to the kitchen at a restaurant? Drop your most honest answer below, because what George Crumb did next is the most legendary kitchen response in American food history. Stay tuned for part 2 of the potato chip file. So the potatoes come back to the kitchen. Too thick. Customer is unhappy. George Crumb, who is famously proud, famously temperamental, and absolutely not the kind of man who accepts complaints quietly, decides to teach this customer a lesson. He takes a potato, he slices it as thin as humanly possible, paper thin. So thin you can almost see through it, thinner than anyone had ever cut a potato before. He drops the slices into boiling hot oil, fries them until they are completely crisp. Beyond crispy actually, almost burnt. He adds an aggressive amount of salt, and he sends them back to the table. The message was clear. You want thin? I'll give you thin. You want crispy? Here's crispy. This is what you deserve for complaining to the best cook in the country. The customer took one bite and loved them. George Crumb could not believe it. The customer asked for more. Other guests at neighboring tables saw the thin, crispy rounds and started asking what they were. Within days, these Saratoga chips, named after the town, became the most popular item on the entire menu at Moon's Lake House. The proprietress, Harriet Moon, immediately declared they would be served in delicate paper cornucopias as the restaurant's signature dish. Crumb's act of culinary revenge had accidentally created something extraordinary. Now, here is where the Food Files has to tell you the full truth. Because this story, as beautiful as it is, has a serious problem. Several serious problems, actually. Problem number 1. The customer is almost universally identified as Cornelius Vanderbilt, the wealthiest man in America. But historians have proven that Cornelius Vanderbilt spent the summer of 1853 touring Europe with his family. He was not in Saratoga Springs. He was not at Moon's Lake House. He could not have been the difficult customer. The Vanderbilt connection was invented in 1973, 120 years after the supposed event, in an advertisement produced by the St. Regis Paper Company. The ad featured a portrait of Crumb with the headline, "This man cooked for Commodore Vanderbilt and Jay Gould and created a billion-dollar business to boot." It was marketing, not history, and it worked so well that the entire world believed it. Problem number 2. Was George Crumb even the inventor? In July 1849, 4 years before the famous story, a New York Herald reporter visited Moon's Lake House and praised a cook named Eliza, whose potato frying reputation is one of the prominent matters of remark at Saratoga. Eliza was already frying thin, crispy potato slices 4 years before Crumb's story takes place. Her last name? Lost to history. Her contribution? Almost completely erased. Problem number 3. George Crumb's own sister, Catherine Wicks, claimed in her obituary in 1924 that she was the one who invented the chips. that she had accidentally dropped a thin potato slice into hot oil and the chip was born from that mistake. So we have George Crumb's revenge story, Eliza the unknown cook, Catherine Wicks the accidental inventor, and Cornelius Vanderbilt who wasn't even there. Sound familiar? If you've been watching the Food Files, this is exactly how every great American food story works. Multiple suspects, competing claims, zero consensus. Comment question number 2. Who do you think really invented the potato chip? Crumb, Eliza, Catherine, someone else entirely? Drop your verdict in the comments. You're on the jury. Whether it was George Crumb, Eliza, Catherine Wicks, or some combination of all three, Saratoga Springs, New York in the 1850s is undeniably where the potato chip went from obscure kitchen experiment to celebrated regional delicacy. But here's the thing about the original potato chip. You couldn't take it home. You couldn't carry it anywhere. You couldn't store it. Because potato chips spoil rapidly. Without packaging, they go stale within hours. They absorb moisture from the air. They become soft, chewy, unpleasant. For the first 70 years of the potato chip's existence, it was exclusively a restaurant food, a luxury item served in upscale establishments. You could only eat it sitting down, in a nice restaurant, on a plate, which is insane to think about when you're reaching into a bag on your couch right now. The chip that changed everything was not a new recipe, it was a bag. Laura Scudder comes up with an idea that sounds almost embarrassingly simple in retrospect. She takes wax paper, she irons it into small bags. She fills those bags with potato chips. She seals the bags shut, that is it. That is the invention. Wax paper bags. But the impact is extraordinary. For the first time in history, potato chips can be purchased, transported, and stored. They can be sold in grocery stores, they can be eaten at home, on a road trip, at a picnic, anywhere. The bag did not just package potato chips, it created an entirely new category of food, the portable snack. Within a decade, potato chip sales across America exploded from a niche restaurant luxury into a mainstream consumer product. By 1930, Americans were consuming 90 million pounds of potato chips annually, a 500% increase from the early 1900s. And then, a traveling salesman with $100 and a car full of chips took the whole thing national. His name was Herman Lay, and his story is almost as improbable as George Crumb's revenge. Herman Lay was born in 1909. He attended Furman University on a baseball and basketball scholarship. He left after 2 years, not because he failed, but because the Great Depression had arrived and he needed to work. He tried everything. He sent 200 letters to potential employers, 200 letters, by hand. Eventually, he got a job as a traveling salesman for a small Atlanta food company called Barrett Food Products. His product? Potato chips. He drove around the American South in a Ford Model A, trunk packed with bags of chips, selling them to every grocery store, diner, and gas station along his route. In 1932, at age 23, he borrowed $100. He used that $100 to buy his own chip delivery route, and then he started building an empire. Comment question number 3. Herman Lay started with $100 and a car full of chips. What would you start with $100 today? Drop your business idea in the comments. Best answer gets pinned. So Herman Lay has his delivery route. He's driving through the American South selling potato chips out of his car, and he is extraordinarily good at it. He understands something that most salespeople don't. Freshness is everything. Potato chips go stale. Stale chips don't sell. Stale chips get returned. Returned chips cost money. So Lay tells his salesman, when you deliver fresh chips to a store, you take the old bags off the shelf yourself. You remove them. You replace them. Every store, every visit. The customer always finds fresh chips. Always. This commitment to freshness, combined with aggressive sales tactics and relentless expansion, turns Herman Lay's small delivery route into something much bigger. In 1939, just 7 years after starting with a $100 loan, Herman Lay buys out a struggling Atlanta chip manufacturer called Barrett Food Products. The very company that originally hired him, he bought his old employer. He renames it H.W. Lay and Company. He expands production. He hires more salesmen. He opens new factories. By 1944, 5 years later, annual sales reach $2 million. The company becomes the first potato chip manufacturer in history to purchase television advertising. In 1944, H.W. Lay and Company introduces Oscar the Happy Potato in a series of TV commercials. A cartoon potato on television selling chips. In 1956, just 24 years after Herman Lay started with $100, H.W. Lay and Company becomes the largest potato chip manufacturer in the United States. 14 production facilities, distribution in 40 states, over 1,000 employees. And then, in 1961, comes the merger that changes everything. Herman Lay sits down with the Frito Company of Dallas. The Frito Company was founded in 1932 by a man named Charles Elmer Doolin, who bought a recipe for corn chips and $100 worth of equipment from a small Mexican restaurant for $100. The same year, the same amount, as Herman Lay started his chip route. Two men, both starting with $100 in 1932, both building empires separately, both merging in 1961. H.W. Lay and Company, $45 million in annual sales. The Frito Company, $60 million in annual sales. Together, Frito-Lay Incorporated, the largest snack food company in America. And then, in 1965, Herman Lay is sitting across from Don Kendall, the CEO of Pepsi-Cola. The story goes that Herman Lay sketched out the terms of a merger on the back of a napkin. The result? Frito-Lay merges with Pepsi-Cola. A new company is born, PepsiCo. PepsiCo. Today, PepsiCo generates approximately $91 billion in annual revenue. Frito-Lay alone, the snack food division, generates over $17 billion per year. And Lay's potato chips specifically require 4 billion pounds of potatoes per year, just for the United States and Canada. 4 billion pounds of potatoes, every year, to make one brand of chip. The traveling salesman with $100 and a car full of potato chips in 1932 built a company that is now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Comment question number 4. Did you know that PepsiCo owns Lay's, Doritos, Cheetos, Fritos, and Pepsi? They control almost everything in your snack cabinet. Does that bother you? Yes or no? Drop it below. Let's bring everything together. We have a revenge prank in 1853, an unknown cook named Eliza, a sister who claims accident, and a Vanderbilt connection that was entirely fabricated. We have a woman with wax paper bags in 1926 who made the whole industry possible, and we have a man with $100 in 1932 who turned it into a $91 billion corporation. An English doctor named William Kitchener published a cookbook called The Cook's Oracle. It included a recipe for potatoes fried in slices or shavings. Twist number 1. George Crumb, the man at the center of the most famous origin story in chip history, never patented his invention. Not once, not ever. He opened his own restaurant in 1860. Called Crumb's House near Saratoga Lake. He put a basket of potato chips on every table. He became famous for them. But he never tried to own the idea. He never tried to build an empire. He died in 1914 at the age of 92. The chip he allegedly created went on to generate tens of billions of dollars. He received nothing. Twist number 2. The earliest known written recipe for fried potato slices does not come from Saratoga Springs in 1853. It comes from England in 1817. An English doctor named William Kitchener published a cookbook called The Cook's Oracle. It included a recipe for potatoes fried in slices or shavings. That is 36 years before George Crumb's famous revenge. So the potato chip, the concept, may have crossed the Atlantic from England the same way so many other American food stories do. And instead of correcting the most powerful man in America, he decided to embrace it. He later explained, "A crumb is bigger than a speck." Twist number 3. An estimated 11.2 million pounds of potato chips are consumed on Super Bowl Sunday alone. 11.2 million pounds in one day. If George Crumb did invent the chip in 1853, he invented something that Americans now consume in quantities that would be completely incomprehensible to a 19th century chef. Twist number 4. And this is the one that gets me every time. George Crumb's famous nickname, the one he used professionally his entire career, was not something he chose. According to one account, Cornelius Vanderbilt, who despite not being there in 1853 was a regular customer at Moon's, could never remember the chef's real name. One day he called a waiter over and asked, "Crumb, how long before we shall eat?" He had mixed up the name. George Speck heard it, and instead of correcting the most powerful man in America, he decided to embrace it. He later explained, "A crumb is bigger than a speck." The name George Crumb was given to him by accident, by a rich man who couldn't remember his employee's actual name. The man who may have invented the world's most consumed snack food did not even choose his own name. So who really invented the potato chip? Eliza, George Crumb, Catherine Wicks, William Kitchener? The honest answer, after everything, is that the potato chip was not invented. It evolved. In multiple kitchens, by multiple people, over decades, and then one woman put it in a wax paper bag, and one man put it in the trunk of a Ford Model A, and the rest is a $30 billion global industry. That is the file on the potato chip. Was it revenge? Was it an accident? Was it a recipe from an English cookbook nobody remembers? The case is officially open. Before you go, final comment question. What is your all-time favorite chip flavor? And which brand do you think makes the best chip on the planet? Drop it below. I want the global ranking right here in the comments. Subscribe to the Food Files, new case every 2 weeks. Next episode, the 70-year pizza war between New York and Chicago. 2 cities, 1 dish, 0 mercy, and 1 very angry Italy watching from across the ocean. That file opens in 2 weeks. Stay curious, stay hungry, and remember, nothing on your plate is exactly what you think it is.